Hello everyone, as you may know, tomorrow is the day that Rivals of Ixalan will be fully spoiled, and that means that, starting tomorrow, I will be cranking out a limited review video every day until I've talked about all 194 cards in the set, the archetypes of the format, and the best commons and uncommons in each color. In the past, I've included a discussion of how I grade the cards in each of my limited review videos, but many people have suggested that I just make a separate video so that they don't have to watch it every time they watch a limited review video or skip past it. It worked out pretty well last time, and I'm going to do it again here. So how do I grade? Well, I use a letter grade system. In this video, I will give you examples from Magic's most recent set that help me explain what each letter grade means. In this case, that means Ixalan. All cards receive a grade on an A to F grading scale. Let's start at the bottom of the scale, which is an F. Fs are cards that you should never put into your deck and should basically never pick unless you have no choice. They are stupidly overcosted cards, or cards that don't actually do anything to help you win a game. Fs are one of the rare grades around, especially these days as more and more cards are becoming playable. However, Fs do still crop up. Interestingly, rares and mythics are pretty commonly Fs, and this is because they sometimes do super quirky things that just aren't going to matter in a game of Limited. Some examples of Fs from Ixalan include Blinding Fog, which was just too situational and expensive to be worth playing in a format that was so fast, and Sorceress Spyglass, which is the kind of card that can be good and constructed, but in Limited it just isn't going to do anything most of the time. Next, let's look at Ds. These cards are also not good, but they are playable if you have to play them. The way I like to define a D is it is a card I will play if my draft trainwrecked and I'm short on playables, or I have to play them because my curve is otherwise horrible, or I really desperately need fixing. Basically, they are cards I'm not happy to have in my deck, but are necessary when things don't go very well. They can actually impact the game, unlike Fs, but they aren't going to be winning you games or anything either. These are the kind of cards that you pick up late in packs and should not ever take even in the first 7 or 8 picks unless you're looking at some insanely weak packs. Ds are usually at common rarity the most, but they do appear at other rarities. Some examples of Ds from Ixalan include Wily Goblin, which has horrible stats for what it costs and doesn't really pay you back for that. You basically only played it if you were desperate for fixing. And Elaborate Fire Cannon is another D, which asks for a lot of setup, but you'll play it if you're desperate enough for removal. Next, let's look at the most common grade you'll find in my reviews, and that is Cs. Grades for limited reviews are basically always a bell curve. Honestly, I think that is a good sign of a limited format. There are more Cs than anything, an okay number of Bs and Ds, and hardly any As or Fs. Cs are the kind of card that you are neither happy to be playing or sad about playing. They're basically replacement level cards who are reasonably costed for what they do, but don't do anything super well. You don't want to take them early, but if you see them hanging around in packs super late, it's usually a good sign that a color is open, and you should feel pretty good about taking it late. Some examples of Cs in Ixalan were Colossal Dreadmaw, which just gave you a huge body but not much else, and Direfleet Hoarder, which provided some decent stats and a little bit of fixing, but certainly wasn't the kind of 2-drop you were pumped about. Once you get into the B range, you are moving towards cards that you are excited to have in your deck. These are the efficient removal spells and powerful creatures that can actually have a large impact on the game. These are also cards you feel good, though admittedly not overjoyed, about first picking in a pack. Getting them picked 3, 4, or 5, though, is pretty great. Bs are most frequently uncommons and rares, but usually the best common in each color is also in the B range or close to it. Examples of Bs in Ixalan were Odonto Vanguard, who provided ridiculous stats, a useful creature type, and was very difficult to kill, and Contract Killing, which could kill anything while also providing you with some fixing. Now let's move to the highest grade, which is the second rarest of them all behind only Fs, and that is As. A-level cards are the kind of card that you want to start basically every draft with because they're so powerful. They are cards that when you cast them swing the game largely in your favor due to their sheer power level. They're also so good that they tempt you to go into their colors just to play them. If you resolve these cards and your opponent can't do anything about them, you're probably going to win the game. They're good in all stages of the game too, and that's an important thing to note that they have over B cards. Whether you're behind, ahead, or at parity with your opponent, they can pull you ahead and help you win the game. As are almost exclusively rares and mythics, so there are usually a few uncommons in every set that make it into that territory as well. We usually call these mythic uncommons because, like powerful mythic rares, you only get to see them if you open them. 2 examples of As in Ixalan are Hostage Taker, which not only kills a creature but lets you cast it, and Regisaur Alpha, which provides you with 7/7 worth of stats for only 5 mana, and 3 of it has haste and trample, and all of your other dinosaurs also get haste. That's a lot of power in one card for both of these. So those are most of the grades that I give cards. However, there are 2 kinds of cards that a single letter grade just doesn't work well for, and as a result, I give these cards 2 grades. The first of these is build-around cards. These are cards that generally are Ds or Fs in your typical limited deck. However, if your deck is composed of the right cards, can end up with a much higher grade. Build-arounds are almost always uncommons, rares, or mythics, but Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan are a little bit unusual in that there are a ton of build-arounds because the tribal archetypes are pushed so hard. Certain cards are excellent in a deck that really got there on a certain creature type, and terrible in all others. Some examples from Ixalan are River Herald's Boon and Anointed Deacon. With both, if you don't end up with a large number of cards with the right creature type, they're pretty mediocre. But if you have enough, they both get to be quite strong, both coming from being in the D range all the way to the C+ or B- range in the right deck. And there are lots of cards like this in this particular set, Rivals of Ixalan and in Ixalan, so you will see 2 grades a lot, more than usual. Now, the other special category of cards that I give 2 grades to is Sideboard Cards. These cards are Ds or Fs in your main board, but are C level or higher out of your sideboard. This means that against certain opponents, the card will be incredible, but against most of them, it isn't worth playing. Sideboard cards are interesting, and one of the more hotly debated things by limited players. Some think high-quality sideboard cards should be taken pretty early, and others think it is better to take a C-level mainboard card than an A-level sideboard card. But we can all agree that the amount of variance these cards have, depending on your opponent's deck, means you can't mainboard them. Some good examples of this in Ixalan are Crushing Canopy and Shaper's Sanctuary. You don't really want to mainboard either of these, but the chances you bring in the Canopy at least once during a draft are pretty high, as destroying both creatures with flying and enchantments means it will find a target against a decent number of decks. Shaper's Sanctuary is another good sideboard card, but it's a little more narrow. Against a lot of decks in the format, they just don't run enough removal for you to want to mainboard it. But if you end up against a rare opponent with 4 or more removal spells, or other effects that target your creatures, it suddenly becomes a pretty nice card that you can bring in. Crushing Canopy, for example, is a D main board and a C+ out of the sideboard, and Shaper's Sanctuary is an F main board, but a C+ out of the sideboard. Well, that does it for this guide to my grades and my limited review videos. Check back tomorrow in the early afternoon for my first video of Limited Review Week, where I will talk about every single white card in Rivals of Ixalan. Thanks for watching.